Hey everybody, it's Roy Heilman at NeverAGooseChase.com. We're out here today, it's the end of August. We're here to pick hazelnuts. In our case, it's the American hazelnut, Corylus americana. And we're hitting the window just right this year at the end of August. The nuts and the husks are ripe and starting to dry out. And before long, the chipmunks and all the rodents are going to come in here and they're going to clean out these nuts. They do it very fast. It's a notorious time when if you miss it, it seems like overnight, you miss it. So we're here to pick them before they're ripe, completely ripe. They range from still pretty green to kind of brown, but they're still pretty juicy and hard to get that husk off. That's fine. We can let them dry a little bit in the garage or something. But the nut inside is brown and ripe, and it separates easily from the husk. That's how you know it's time. Let's go pick some more. Okay, it's been a couple days since we picked our nuts. I set them out in the garage to dry a couple of days. This makes the husks, they dry out pretty fast. It makes them easier to peel, which is not only easier, but saves time. It's also kind of nice if we don't always have time to pick and husk all in the same day. It's nice to just be able to set them aside and come back to it later. A couple of considerations though. Put them out in something where they're not too deep, where they have plenty of air circulation. If you keep them all stuffed up together, they will mold really fast. Plus, they don't dry out. Second, put them in a place where the rodents cannot get to them, because they'll help themselves, certainly, if they can, and they'll do a number on your nut supply. Believe me, you'll only make that mistake once. All I do is I put the tray or box on the top of a 5-gallon bucket, and I've never had a problem yet. Now, when you're pulling the husks off, the husks have fine hairs, which some people will complain about getting embedded in their skin. So you can wear leather gloves, maybe rubber gloves, and honestly, I don't bother, because it doesn't bother me when it gets embedded in my fingers. It's just not that much of a hassle. Now, once we get them all husked, we're going to let them sit in a tray in a single layer for a couple of weeks. They need to dry. They need to dry completely. And it's at this time of the year when the grubs, which are laid earlier in the summer as single eggs, those grubs start emerging right now. So you need to give them time to drill a hole and fall out in the nuts where they are present. Then, once they're dry and all the grubs are gone, you can see which ones have holes in them. You can discard them anyway. All right, back to work. Hey, we're back. It's been a few weeks. The weather turned cold. It's even raining a little bit today. It's a long way from that idyllic August day when we started this. But the nuts have been sitting in this plastic tray in the garage for weeks now, and they're completely dried out, or as dry as they can get, without roasting, but we'll get there in a minute. I like to use this black plastic tray. It's just an old lid from a recycling bin because it holds a lot of hazelnuts. And right when we're done pulling the husks off, these nuts are really, they're really wet to the touch. They're extremely, waterlogged still. They're ripe, but they're not dry. And so if I set this out in the sun for a couple hours, this black plastic tray heats up very nicely, and we get kind of a heat bubble in the sun, and it jump starts these nuts on their drying process. When they're all dried out, I take to roast them. I always roast them. I put them on a sheet tray in the oven for about half an hour at 225 degrees. If you don't roast them, they're just going to have a raw nut flavor that really honestly doesn't even taste like hazelnut. It just tastes like raw nut. Certainly not why we've been at this for this many weeks. So when you roast them, they take on, of course, that delicious hazelnut flavor, but they also will turn a little bit darker. They go from this gorgeous nut brown color to kind of a darker, more reddish brown. And that is one way that you can tell them apart if you actually have some nuts sitting around. You're not sure how long they've been in the basement. But when they're all done, I recommend putting them in a container, and it obviously doesn't have to be a fancy container, but a container that you label with the year, so you have an idea how long you've been holding on to those. Now they will last a good year until next year's harvest, or if next year's harvest isn't very good, they will last even longer than that. No problem, especially if they're roasted. Keep them in a cool, dry place, and they'll be good to go. Don't bother putting them in the fridge. I don't think it's worth it. When it's time to eat them, this is really no good. This old thing that we've had around for a long time, it doesn't give you much leverage. It's very short. It's hard on the hands to squeeze, and our small native hazelnuts, much smaller than the English hazelnuts that we buy in the store, they're hard to crack because we don't have much leverage on this thing, and your hands are going to hurt, your hands and fingers, after a short time. Much better than this is this. It's sold as a seafood and nutcracker, and they're still inexpensive. I think I bought this one at a thrift store, so maybe 50 cents. And you see, you get a lot more leverage on that. And this profile, it's flatter and wider. It's much easier on your hands. Much easier. Much better. More than just these two, there are many nut cracking devices on the market, and I will be doing a video in the coming months. I'm going to be testing and analyzing, giving you my feedback on a bunch of those. Some of them cost a pretty penny, and I'll let you know what's worth it and what's not. So if you're not already watching this from YouTube, go to YouTube, subscribe so you can see that and other foraging video updates as they come out. Another foraging video in the works. Just like we harvested and processed these hazelnuts, we'll do the same thing with wild walnuts. That's in the works. So, like I said, go there, like the video, subscribe, and until we meet again, happy foraging.